I'd like to open the regular planning board meeting for February 7th. It is 6:02 or 3 p.m. We are being video recorded and audio recorded. No. But we're being video recorded. We may be going out live as well. We're not sure. So first up would be administrative items. First is a pre-application consultation, file number 23-003, PAC, request by the applicant to discuss a proposed subdivision of 2 lots for 0 Gifford Road, map 29, lot 22C.
If you prefer to use that instead of what we have up there, we can use that.
Yeah, I can use this.
I'll just shoot this off so it's easier to see.
Alright, well,
Hopefully that works okay.
If you want the page turned on the screen, just let me know and I'll,
what is it?
it's up on top, it's there too.
Okay.
But if you want it changed,
Alright, good evening, board. I'm Emmanuel Pacheco Jr. I'm here with Emmanuel Pacheco Sr., the owner of Gifford Road. Also, the home address is 26 Andrew Court in Westport. Tonight, we're here for a pre-application meeting to go over a couple of concept plans that we developed for the lots on Gifford Road. I hope you guys had a chance to look through them. I submitted 3 of them. And I want to go with the board and see which one they think would be best suited for the area.
Okay.
So we got some pros and cons to each one, of course. By favorability, it's pretty much concept by 1, 2, and 3, based on our preference. Of course, we let you input on each one and let us know what you think. So the first one basically has, in parcel B, you have 150 feet frontage there, and then you create a future rural lane.
I think we have it up on the board. It's
Okay.
easier to see.
Yes, so you'd have a separate access here to the rural lane. Would require some waivers for the radiuses. That would be the first concept plan. This one would be best because we have an existing soil absorption system we're trying to work around. We could have put a road in the middle, all the way to the back, but that would extend the road. That would force the houses to go further towards the back. It would increase the impervious area. So we're trying to keep this here and not trying to modify it in any way. So this one would be best for having a future system here for this lot. And if we need a reserve area, it can be placed in this front area as well. Same with this lot. It'd be better for septic systems. And this plan would also have the least amount of impervious area.
We can just change the page on
Okay,
this.
sure. All right. The second one would have a railroad extending straight in with a leg off to the side. This would require a waiver as well for the radius here. Or we can put a radius there and ask for one here on the round as well. This one is second best. We still have a good area for the soil absorption system on parcel B, and the reserve area could be in front of it as well. The only issue with this one is if the septic system had failed and we need to put it in the reserve area, we'd most likely have to cross the driveway and put it somewhere in this region. Obviously, we have a well back here, so the 100-foot radius would really make it difficult to place the septic system in leaching fields. So in this third plan, this is the third concept plan. This one would have the most impervious area out of the 3 designs. We'd be able to possibly put a septic system here in front of the home and a reserve area here. Same thing, parcel A, we have to, if it ever failed, we have to cross the driveway and put it somewhere closer to the roadway, making it a little more difficult to design. Those are basically the three concept plans we developed. Just want to get your opinion on that.
Okay, planners, what are your thoughts?
So, there's not enough frontage for this. So would you be asking for flexible frontage?
No, this would be a subdivision. We would get the frontage from
This is subdivision.
rural residential land.
These are little subdivision.
It's a subdivision.
So you have to add up the frontage on the
Yes.
roadway,
Right, but,
not
I
on,
don't-
not on Gifford Road.
right, but I don't think you get enough frontage.
Yeah, you should have the frontages that are calculated here. There should be, each one should have over 150 feet.
So planners, are those lanes that he's drawn? Are they rural lanes?
Yes,
Yes?
it says we're.
They have-
related.
they
It
have
says,
the-
but
Yeah.
I mean, are they what?
Do they meet the requirement?
I mean, they're just sketches, obviously, but they have the adequate right-of-way to meet the rural lane standard.
It's a driveway posing as a road.
Right. It wouldn't be the first one.
And what's shown here is a 20-foot wide gravel road. That's what I have in all these plans. And basically, that's what the impervious area is calculated based on 20-foot wide roads as well. And the right-of-ways are all 40 feet wide.
So so where's the the reserve system for the northern lot, and where are the wells for these two lots?
Parcel A, the reserve area, I believe the test pits were probably placed here back when, before it was,
Yeah,
before we were doing this. So this one would need to be perked. We'd have to perk this side of the lot. And depending on which roadway layout we go, we decide which way to perk for parcel B. But for parcel A, obviously that system's already in. The reserve area was somewhere, I think, at the edge of this rural lane. So that one should have been all set. We have one well on site right now. So I mean, the 100-foot radius would be probably somewhere around here. So obviously, the front section of the lot would be the only usable area for the leaching field to the well. And we'd most likely put a secondary well probably somewhere over here.
so how do you get the reserve area for lot B, I guess it is?
Lot B, we'd have a limited area, it'd have to be a long trench. It'd have to work somewhere in here. It'd be difficult to work with on this design. That's why I prefer the other two designs. So this was the worst case scenario. But you want to go back to concept number 2? This one is reasonable, but again, this would be a little bit difficult for our system. A little bit better than the Hammerhead lot. And this one would definitely work out well for us. But yeah, this one would have to, if it ever failed, it'd have to cross the driveway. It'd have to be somewhere closer to the road. Water table, I think 24 inches to 36 inches over here, so this area would need to be mounted if it ever failed, it had to be moved. So it wouldn't look great from the roadway. And obviously, option number 1 would be the best for septic systems, I think. But it would require waivers for the radiuses. Or reduction to radiuses.
So on parcel B, or the whole area of parcel B, you don't have any perk tests yet?
Not as of yet, no. I assume if we come right over here, it's gonna be pretty similar in nature, I would assume.
So what is the history of this? I mean, is it that, because you've got a septic system you put in a year and a half ago or something?
Yeah, so originally my
And-
father was gonna build a house.
So you're gonna have a single family
He was
on
gonna have a
this?
single family with a 6-bedroom system. He decided he didn't wanna leave his home, so we decided to sell the house, and I said, hey, how about I come back and see if we can develop this property, and I can get myself a piece of land. and he'd still have one lot left over for himself. So originally it was supposed to be a large home, about 100 feet long, and therefore he's no longer going to build that, so we're trying to get 2 small homes out of that.
So I think one thing that Amy was trying to say earlier is that these lots, the frontage would be calculated around the bends of these lanes that are being proposed, right?
Correct.
I think I have several homes that have been calculated that way, that have been submitted and approved by the board. Does anyone disagree with that, or?
I think that other people for subdivisions do get frontage on the cul-de-sac or the hammerhead.
It's been a,
And what you have shown here in the number 2 is a traditional hammerhead without the benefit of the extra radius.
Yeah. And again, I could also reverse this with a radius here and ask for a waiver for that rounding.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant's entitled to submit a subdivision plan, and we can review it. We have approved similar short cul-de-sac roads, and my preference would be B. And I think it ends up, when you take away the lot lines, because they don't show on the ground, it would look like a traditional sort of T driveway going into a second home. And, you can read the subdivision standards and apply for it, but, we, in these short cul-de-sacs, we frequently approve rural road standards for these.
And so are you considering paving or gravel?
I would probably do gravel at this point.
And I think that I also agree that the B, the second one, this one, is a more traditional hammerhead,
Yes.
which is an approved type of cul-de-sac or end of road. The other 2 are, the third one, it just seems like a waste of space.
I agree.
And the first one doesn't meet our standards.
Yeah, that was something similar with Rosemary's Way. I tried doing something similar to that. I had a short road, some roundings in there. I tried making that similar to that, just so the board could review. It didn't have the least amount of impervious area, but I figured this would probably be the one that the board would be more on board with.
And I think that if you wanted to make it more compliant, you could even put the radius in. I don't see how that hurts you.
Put the radius on the inside,
On this side,
over here.
yeah.
The radius, and then I'd have to just request a rounding radius on that corner.
Why?
Because each radius would be 25 feet, so I couldn't have, I don't have enough room for 2 radiuses in that spot.
But this isn't going to be the gravel way, this is going to be just the right-of-way.
Correct.
So I don't see how that hurts you.
Yeah, it would have to be a reduced radius though. So if I match this curve here, it
Mhm.
would be a smaller radius coming to here. I don't have enough length to do 2 25-foot radiuses. And I've slid this as far up as I can to avoid hitting the setbacks of the leaching system as well. So you'd have 25 feet from this point to here, and then another, I believe, 6 feet to the road, a straight stretch.
So are you anticipating putting driveways in as well?
Yes, I mean, it would be part of it, we'd have to put the roadways in. correct?
You have to put the roadway in, yes.
Yeah.
But then you're gonna put a driveway, or you're gonna park on the road?
Oh, I mean, for this lot, we definitely put the driveway in all at once. And then this one would be developed in the future, so we wouldn't do that at this point.
Any more comments, questions?
No.
Okay. I think you've got our ideas.
That's move forward with B, option B?
I think so.
Okay, all right, and obviously, I mentioned some of the waivers, I mean, working with this, I'd also I'd probably request some cross slope waivers for the driveways as well. Ideally, I'd like to direct the stormwater around the dwellings, so I tried to push them to each side, so I wouldn't be able to do a crown, but we'll get into that next meeting, I guess, the next phase.
Yeah, do you have an engineer, or did you do these yourself?
We're working with the company, with the Department of Engineering.
Well, they should be able to help you
Sure.
with that and with the stormwater, too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is a pre-application consultation, file number 23-006, PAC, request by the applicant to discuss a proposed special permit common driveway and flexible frontage of 3 lots for 744 Drift Road, map 54, lot 43A.
Good evening. My name is Keith Calcula. I live at 744 Drift Road. This is my first appearance here, so I apologize if I'm missing anything in terms of procedures and protocols. And for instance, I was wondering whether my submission would end up here, and there it is. So this is a pre-application consultation, and I am applying for special permits for a common driveway and flexible frontage for reduced density. The property is currently outlined, although I'm not sure why that is not included. It is the whole thing. And actually, when I was in law school, that was called a pork chop lot. What are they now, hammerhead lots?
Yeah, pork chops.
The total property is 25 acres, or 24.9, and I propose three lots. Three lots here. There. The first two being in this portion of the property, and the third one being here, which is already sort of naturally divided by way of Snell Creek here. This particular property lends itself quite well to this bylaw because of the design standards. First of all, there is already existing driveways in place that will not require the building of any new addition driveways, and therefore reduces the total number of driveways because it doesn't change at all. And if we could go back to the previous color one, there's one other one too. Here we are, yes. This shows the wetlands on the property. It's 24.9 acres in total. On what I propose as Lot 3, there's 9.34 acres of upland and 7.67 of marsh. And in the other areas where I propose Lots 1 and 2, there is a total of 7.9 acres, 1.3 of which is a deciduous swamp. So we have 6.6 acres of upland to deal with. And as you can see in the middle, where I would propose a dividing line to be, which I understand would be a moving target anyways because of necessity of meeting proper standards, area, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a nice field here, which is 2 acres, just under 2 acres. And it's particularly good for this application, mainly because of how it does respond to the design criteria. And That is, it's natural sightlines, the existing stone wall, which will not be moved, little, it will be required in the way of slope disturbance or soil vegetation. You know, there's several acres there, and it should be able to do it. This is a pre-consultation stage. I have hired engineers, so they've already delineated the wetlands and done the boundaries and particular plans, and are currently working on the necessary load plan. But of course, I'm here this evening to see if if we're going in the right direction in terms of what I'm hoping to accomplish here. And as I said, I think there's enough land here to work with because we will be. There's an existing driveway that comes all the way through here, and this is where my house is. And the ultimate plan is that if I'm able to do this, the remainder of my property, which would be lot 3, where I reside, I want to put conservation restrictions on that. I've already talked with Ross Moran and the Westport Land Conservation Trust, and so the goal is that you'll see that if that in fact is occurred, where my little red line is there, we would be increasing the conservation context along that side of the east branch of the river. So it seems that I'm meeting the criteria and that the design standards would be met, and the result would be increased conservation restrictions along the Westport River. And so I'm hoping that I'm on the right track, and I welcome your feedback as to whether I'm proceeding in the right direction.
Sure, it looks interesting, but the flexible frontage bylaw has requirements for frontage, even though they were reduced. And maybe I'm missing something, but
Well, this is an application in conjunction with section 8.5 for the common driveway, which I thought that in addition with 8.6 for the flexible frontage deals with that particular issue.
well, with the flexible frontage, we hope people use the common driveway
Yes.
to cut down on curb cuts in our town roads. But it doesn't eliminate the need for frontage. So your lot now has, I don't know how big that frontage is, but it's
100
It's
feet.
100 feet.
100 feet.
Yes, 1975 was when the plan was laid out.
You have to have a minimum of 50 feet of frontage for each lot.
Yes.
And I don't see how you divide 100 by 3 and get 50-foot frontage on each one. And I don't think you can use the 100-foot frontage to divide land in the back that doesn't have any frontage on the road or the way in existence, unless the driveway is somehow a way in existence.
Unless the driveway is somehow, I'm sorry.
A way in existence, or an ancient way, or something like that?
Well, as I pointed out, we do have the common driveway, I mean, what I would like to be the common driveway in existence. And it goes all through the areas where I propose as lot 1, lot 2, over Stell Creek and down here, and through what I would propose for conservation. But you're actually just taking me a little off guard, because I was aware of that 50-foot requirement. Matter of fact, Ross Moran had spoken to me about it. But then we looked further at the bylaw, and my understanding, or at least my uneducated reading of section 8.5 was that the common driveway did not really, it almost made the frontage requirement in the subsequent section moot.
Can I just say one thing
Yeah.
also? That the common driveway, the maximum length of the common driveway is 500 feet. So when Michael and I, mapped it out, 500 feet is considerably still at the beginning of the first parcel of land.
500 feet goes to about this location.
So,
So I applaud what you're trying to do, but I don't know that we have the mechanism to help you do it.
Well, then, what do we say we put all this in the round file, and I apply for 2 lots rather than 3?
Yeah.
That seems to be the answer.
Before you go, before,
Yes,
sorry,
Mr. Chairman.
let my colleague make a point, then I'd like to make a point.
So I'm just trying to get some things straight. Amy, can you get to this up on the board?
yep.
So Keith, first of all, it's good to see you.
Thank you, John.
Confess to knowing Keith earlier. I'm confused, at least on this drawing, because there's part of it that's drawn, circled in yellow, which I think is the property you're bringing before
Yes,
us.
this is the plan on record.
And
And
yet
I
there's
did
a,
yellow to distinguish it from my neighbor Howie, who had done
Okay.
the original subdivision.
because there's a driveway here that goes on his,
Yes.
so is that the driveway that is the common driveway or not?
No, it is not. The common driveway goes right through here
Ah,
and shows on the mortgage plan. Now, this is Howie's driveway, and he has a right-of-way right here to get to his little area here. He's got a dock there.
okay.
So when he subdivided, he kept himself the right to come over my bridge and, get over to his skiff.
Oh, all right, okay. That clarifies it. Sorry, thanks. Go ahead, Bob.
The difficulty that I think the board finds itself with your sketch is that we could, this would create a lot, if it were divided as shown in the red sketch that you provided, it would leave your home on a lot that didn't front on the street.
Correct, it would be served by the common driveway.
Okay, but just, you're jumping to another point. We are not allowed to divide land that doesn't front on a way, a public way or a way that's shown under the subdivision control law. There's a bunch of standards. Existing driveways are not one of those standards. We do, however, have the flexible frontage provision. And the minimum for that is 50 feet.
Right.
So, but the ability to benefit yourself of the flexible frontage is that has to show a reduction in the number of lots that you could develop.
Yes, a low plan.
Okay.
We have that.
So, then the question is, well, what's the number of lots that you could develop?
Could have or could?
Could.
Well, apparently, well, 0 at the moment, because
Well,
if
you
it
know,
only allows
the-
one residence, it was taken in 1790.
Well, there's enough width to create a subdivision road. There are things that you could do. We're not, I am not recommending any of those things. You know, it looks as if what you would like to do is reasonable for your property and could meet conservation interests and all those kinds of things. And as part of the consultation, I'm trying to suggest a way that you might be able to derive that. So, since we have, if you were to do a, in quotes, paper division, if we came in and allowed 2 50-foot lots, one 50-foot wide running all the way to wherever you get beyond the first line. And then the other 50-foot property would be the front lot that you want. And then, you know, the argument you would have to make is that that common driveway that runs in and out of those two lots would be the access to both of them. The only stumbling block is, in order for us to give you two, you have to show that you could have developed three.
I have a blue plan that shows 6, so I guess we're on our way.
It is a proof plan that's required. That we're not, if you could only get to, and we have applicants, some of them are in this room right now, who could only get to, and they, in order to divide their land, did a little subdivision. So, you know, just looking at how you would do that, you need to produce this proof plan that shows you could get more lots of it, whatever that number is. And then you could make an application for dividing this in two, but that's the most that would be possible, because you only have 100 feet, and we can't grant any division of land that has less than 50-foot frontage, which I think is right.
Correct. You could, however, do a subdivision and split it off from there into 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. But you would need to use the 50-foot frontage that you have on your whole property for the 40-foot right-of-way for a subdivision road that would go in, and then you could have frontage off of that. So that the subdivision road would provide frontage for land in the back. And you could do that if you have it's really a geometry lesson, but you could do it. I mean, your engineer can certainly figure it out.
If I may be so bold, we're getting into areas which is completely foreign to me. So before I start trying to grasp these all new concepts, could you tell me that, according to what I'm going to do, that is an application under flexible frontage, would I be able to do 2 lots?
I think what Jim is saying is, Keith, you came here with what I would say, and I'm just speaking for myself, is a good idea. It's a plan that underdevelops valuable land, achieves conservation goals. It's an admirable plan, but it runs into some problems with frontage. What our chairman is saying is that you could accomplish this by, instead of using a common driveway, you would instead make that common driveway a road. And that road would then allow you to create 3 lots, instead of, as Bob was talking about, only 2 lots, because your frontage would be created by the road, not the frontage you have on Drift Road.
What is the required width of said road?
50 feet.
50 feet.
So-
And it doesn't have to be, you know, asphalt with guardrails and a yellow stripe down it. It can look the same as what is there now. It just has to be, you know, it just has to be a right-of-way.
It can be a rural residential lane, which you can find in our bylaws, which is a gravel road. It's required to be, has to be a 40-foot right-of-way, not a 50-foot right-of-way.
Because fire engines gotta go down and put a fire
So,
out in your house.
and it's gotta be 20 feet of gravel,
Mm-hmm.
20 feet wide,
Yes.
shoulders. But you have a 40-foot right-of-way, you have 50 feet, so you have room to do that. And if you went back a couple hundred feet, you'd get well, you probably need to go further. But
Yeah.
you could go back
Yeah, it
500
doesn't-
feet, then
it
you
doesn't-
have
it doesn't-
three.
Doesn't have to go that far, it just has to be long enough for you to create the legal frontage that you need, which is 150 feet
For each lot.
for each lot.
So, but frontage not here on Drift Road, but instead.
On the
Exactly.
on the new way. Then you would, then, because you have so much land, you would have, you could create the flexibility that you want in drawing the lot lines and all of that.
So
And
your
you-
lot lines are gonna look complicated,
Mhm.
because they're all gonna have to come up and attach to that road, right? So it's gonna look weird on paper, but you're still gonna achieve
Exactly
what you came in to achieve, which is 3 lots and the conservation. So your engineer's gonna use a lot of ink in his pens to draw these lot lines, but it's still gonna achieve your goal of 3 lots, conservation areas, and, which is what you came in here to do.
Mhm. Okay.
And it's not gonna be a flexible frontage, which sounds cool.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a subdivision, which
Yeah.
sounds terrible.
Yes.
But it's gonna accomplish the goal you came in, which was a great goal, which is a great goal. And that's why our chairman is chairman, because he's very smart, and he thinks of ways to achieve good goals.
Okay, so again, this is new to me, so I apologize if I'm being redundant or asking the same questions over again. But if we follow this plan, you mentioned a procedure rural lanes within the bylaw, which I need to search out. What is the title of that section?
Rural residential lane.
Rural residential lane.
Say that fast.
It's not in the zoning, it's in the subdivision rules and regulations.
In the subdivision rules,
Right.
which is still within the planning board.
These people can help you with all of
If
that.
if you email me, I can send you the links and the pages of where you can find that info.
Okay.
And Keith, to answer your question before we got into this, was, okay, you're gonna throw this plan in the round file and come for 2 lots. You can do 2 lots, right? No, you can't. Unless you prove that you can do what
3.
Bob, that you can do 3 or more.
3 more, but for
But
reduced frontage.
it can't be in the format that you have here. Both lots still have to touch
The street.
Drift Road.
Okay. And we do so by way of a rural residential lane.
No, I'm just answering your first question after you said, okay, forget that, we'll do 2 lots. You can't do 2 lots the way that you want to. They both have to touch Drift Road as a flexible frontage application. So that 50 feet, no, you can only get one.
No.
It's only 50 feet.
So-
No, you have 100 feet.
No, it's 100. Here's
100.
100 feet.
100.
So if you have 100 feet, the strip of land that goes in that narrow neck is gotta be 50 feet wide all the way for each lot.
Oh, okay, so right now, okay, this is 100 feet, and there is an existing driveway that comes
Yep.
in, and then it meets with Howie's here, and it comes across there. So this driveway needs to be 50 feet long on paper, certainly, for,
And it's gotta touch your lot.
so it has to go all the way,
All the way.
all the way over to Snell Creek.
Well, I don't,
I mean,
I think this is a discussion headed in the wrong direction.
I guess so.
So the answer is, you're gonna do, the answer is you could do a very small subdivision, and the only purpose of the subdivision, and I want you to have it in your mind, we're only a process to create 2 or 3 lots that have 150 feet of frontage on a street. And so we can approve streets. So you come in and apply for a street and we approve it. Now, what goes in the street, that is the road, the street is a legal thing that has boundaries to it. And what fits inside the way, that street, is a road. And, you know, if you think, well, I just need to get down a ways so I can have these 150-foot frontages, and then after that, all your lot that you sit on, you know, could sit on the driveway. Don't think of building a road all the way to your house. We're just gonna build a little short piece of road to create legal frontage for these lots. Then you create the lots you want, you site the homes where you'd like to have them sited, and create lot lines around that. And then we think about the relief of the narrow, you know, the right of way, and the subdivision rules only apply within the subdivision boundaries, that is, within the street. So that 20 feet and the shoulders and the grading and all of that stuff that's in the subdivision rules and regulations apply within the street. After that, it can be your driveway just like you have now. You don't have to touch, you know, the rest of that. So the answer to what you'd like to achieve sort of lies in the subdivision. They can help you with the rules and regulations and point to what sections you
Before
need.
subdivision, I didn't catch the term you said.
The rules and regulations.
What I wanted to create is a blank subdivision. I didn't hear the word you used before.
It's just a
Compliant.
subdivision.
And it seems oxymoron, like an oxymoron, to save land, you're gonna create a subdivision. But that's how you're gonna do
What
it.
you're gonna do. Okay, question in terms of procedure, am I allowed another consultation pre-application?
Yeah, sure.
We're a public body, you can come in every meeting.
Well, I didn't know if I could do something in one shot.
No.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Do you want to share yours instead, or? What? Okay, just tell me when you want to. Yeah.
Thank you.
He doesn't recall, but I did some work with Ian's, follow-up,
Okay, so now we have the public hearing scheduled originally for 6:15 for the 2023 zoning bylaw amendments. Proper notice was given in the Westport Shorelines on Thursday, January 26th, and Thursday, February 2nd. So we're going to have an overview. We have minor amendments to follow the sections, definitions, flexible frontage, accessory apartments, and solar energy systems, and we're going to go through them separately. The staff is going to do the presentation of section revisions. The planning board is going to field questions and comments. And then there'll be public questions or comments. And I think that they can also send these comments to us by email or mail.
If anyone can,
Or they can
mail it
come
to
into
us,
the planning board
come into the
office.
office, yep.
So, you're up.
All right, so, I know no one's here in the audience tonight, but I'm gonna just present this like I would if there were, just because if anybody wants to watch this, then there could be some, there's some concepts and terms that I might explain that you all obviously will.
Why don't you
know,
move
but-
your microphone closer to you
Sure.
so that it all goes in?
But just in case anyone watches, I'll go over some of the.
What do you mean, in case? A lot of people watch.
All right, So our first revision here is in section 3. It's the definition sections of the zoning bylaws. This is a quick and easy one. It's a typo in the text, so that the definition correctly reads as landowner, owner, legal or beneficial owner of land, including those holding the right to purchase or lease the land, or any other person holding proprietary rights in the land. You all have any questions? Here.
It's pretty self-explanatory. I think we're all set.
Okay, thank you. The next section we have is section 8.6, which is currently titled the frontage reduction ratios in proportion to dwelling density reduction. And so in this section, we're proposing to remove references to the word density because it's not quite the most accurate terminology for what this section sets out to accomplish. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in the next slide. So in this slide, we would then amend the section title to be just flexible frontage. So here's on this slide, you can see an explanation of what I was referring to in the last slide. So in planning, density is typically going to refer to a measurement of concentration of dwelling units in a given area. And so density can be measured on a parcel by parcel basis, like in the parcels in this mock-up up on the screen, or it can be measured across an entire neighborhood. So in the mock-up, it would be the entire large square that you'd be measuring, and that would give you a calculation that represents dwelling units per acre. So on the other hand, what the flexible frontage section is allowing is a reduction of frontage in exchange for a larger lot size and more upland. And so what upland is essentially is land that is not wetlands. The frontage, for clarification, is the length of the lot along a road, and that's outlined in red in the image at right. And so instead of referring to density, which isn't necessarily what the trade-off is here, we'll just refer directly to what's being regulated by this bylaw itself, which is frontage, lot size, and upland. This way we can have a little bit more straightforward approach to saying a straightforward approach that a reduction in the frontage requires an increase of the lot size in upland, and avoiding references to other terms like density that can cause some confusion here. So now that those overarching concepts have been explained, we can go forward and make some edits to the text itself. So the flexible frontage purpose and intent section will now read as: the purpose and intent of this section is to encourage balance between increased lot size and upland while reducing future vehicular trips, road congestion, demand for public services, and the number of curb cuts onto town roadways, preserve the natural and cultural resources visible along these roadways, facilitate the movement of wildlife, protect traditional access to backland, open space, and improve the design and site planning of smaller residential neighborhoods. To achieve this, the planning board may issue a special permit to allow a reduction in the otherwise applicable frontage requirements on a public way, a way approved by the planning board under the subdivision control law, or a private way that the planning board votes to determine has been in existence since prior to the effective date of the subdivision control law in the town of Westport and has adequate width, grade, and construction within the meaning of GLC 41, section 81L for the proposed development for one or more of the lots proposed in exchange for a corresponding increase in lot size and upland and reliance upon common driveways if applicable. Then next we will amend the section 8.6.4, the section title frontage reduction ratios in proportion to dwelling density reduction, and just remove the last part of that. So the section title is then frontage reduction. And finally, the text for the frontage reduction section itself will now read as, a special permit may be issued so that the required lot frontage is decreased as a function of average lot size in upland increase in equal proportions to a minimum of 50 feet of frontage. And if the board has any questions, feel free.
Yeah, I think that, for instance, if you go back to section 8.6.4, which is frontage reduction ratios in proportion to dwelling density reduction. Are we changing the title of that?
Yes.
Yes, the title 8.6.4, the title is just going to change to frontage reduction. So when this originally came up, the references to density were confused in a prior application. And it's not, this regulation isn't necessarily reducing density. It's requiring that that there's an increase of lot size in upland in exchange for that frontage reduction. So it's just being a little bit more direct with what is being requested, or what the terms that are being used in each title and each section text. The regulation itself is not being changed at all.
No, I understand. I guess my question is, when we first talked about doing this, we were talking about changing the definition of density from housing or residential or dwelling density to lot density or something like that. I just want to make sure that this is clear to people reading this when they go through our bylaw, that it is understandable and clear. And if I would open it to anybody else. Is it going to make it? So we were trying to fix the problem that we had before, where there were some applicants that came in and thought that it was that, you know, if you could, on 2 lots, if you could have a duplex and a single family, if you're just going to have 2 single families, that then they can get an extra lot because it's less density. And I'm not sure that this makes it more understandable. It fixes the problem that we had, but
What we're trading is the density in terms of units, exactly that,
Right.
that, I could have done duplex arguments to lot size. What we're talking about is, if you want to take advantage of the flexible frontage with reduced frontage, then you have to increase the lot size. And there's an actual formula in that section. That formula
Right.
hasn't changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the idea of the frontage reduction, getting rid of anything that says dwelling density is exactly what we should do. What we're talking about is getting a frontage reduction, and then, I don't have the body of the text, but I recall it has a table in it, and for varying widths of frontage, you get different upland and wetland areas.
Mm-hmm.
any other comments or questions?
Michael, just, so are you, is this little graphic here, go back, you can go back to the slide with the little, and is this going into the bylaw, or is this,
This is not going.
this is just is this being, but what are you trying to do here? You're trying to, I know what you're trying to explain, the difference, but I don't, I guess, what I'm reading and what you're illustrating graphically I don't quite follow because, but I guess it's in mute. You're not going to present this, that it's not part of the bylaw, but you might just explain to me, you've got 4 dwelling units, right? 4 lots. And what is the difference between, and so on the left-hand, there it is, the left-hand diagram, 4 lots, 4 dwelling units, and you're referring to this as number, well, this is an illustration of 4 lots, 4 dwelling units. Then you move over to the right-hand side, and you're showing where they get their frontage. But if you're trying to explain the advantage of flexible frontage, wouldn't you show larger lots with reduced number of dwelling units?
Sure, so
Or is that not what you're trying to do with this diagram?
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
wanna-
I made an attempt at trying to depict these concepts in a visual way, and but the purpose of this was to show the concepts of residential density versus what is going to be what is being regulated in flexible frontage. So density is typically, you're going to look at dwelling units per acre, and the flexible frontage is only looking at frontage, uplands, and lot area. So I was trying to explain the differences between these two items. Perhaps I made it a little bit more confusing by adding these images, but these images will not be in the bylaws at all.
Right. Well, if it's clear to everybody else, then I'm okay.
No, it's not. I think I was pondering over this myself at home, and I don't understand what it's supposed to be showing, but with regard to what we're talking about. Because the 2 plans are identical, they just have different.
Yeah, but what they highlight is different. The one on the right, the legend on the left says wetlands, uplands, and frontage, and on the bottom, the red line shows what we're focusing on here is frontage. So I think while the maps are the same, it says this is what we're measuring here. We're not just measuring density, we're measuring frontage, and we're measuring wetlands and uplands. So it tells you that we're measuring different things,
Yeah.
even though the layout is exactly the same. That's the point I got from the 2 identical
Yeah.
plans.
So and that's 100% like what I was trying to demonstrate with this. And so it's supposed to demonstrate that density is a measurement of dwelling units per acre. It's a ratio of dwelling units per acre, while flexible frontage is a ratio of frontage to lot area in uplands.
Why are the, I think if there were no lot lines shown on the left thing, and just said this is X number of acres, and there are 4 dwellings, and this is so many units an acre, and that's density. And that's what we don't want to control, where, the language in the bylaw is lot size, and this is how, for a given frontage, this is how that creating lots with that flexibility look like. Right? If my colleagues have questions, don't show this to town meeting.
No, that's fair.
Well, it's only clear to the MIT guys like John and probably Michael.
Right. All these people have been to planning school, so, okay. Anyway, sorry we're digressing, but anyway, I think it's fairly clear. So let's move on.
We're on 9.5. Thanks. Okay, so next we have the accessory apartments section. We're proposing to add a new subsection to the bylaw to define an owner of an accessory apartment, and just keep in mind that this definition would only apply to accessory apartments. And this definition will be inserted in the beginning of the accessory apartment section at 9.5.2, which then requires that we renumber each subsequent section for accessory apartments. And so this definition will read as, for the purposes of section 9.5 of these bylaws, an owner shall be a natural person, either A, listed as the record owner on a deed on file at the Bristol County Registry of Deeds, Southern District, or B, the owner of at least 25% of a business entity, including a limited liability company owning the property.
Questions, comments?
Any comments?
Why do we need this?
The zoning board
Yeah, so
felt
this,
that they needed
this,
it.
this was a request made from the zoning board of appeals in response to concerns over having ownership of accessory apartments that are not the owners of the property.
Okay.
I think it fits into the bylaw that, that section, because one of the dwelling units has to be occupied by an
the
owner.
owners.
So how do you define ownership if it's an LLC? So,
Okay,
I think that's
and then-
good.
Yeah, I understand that. Seems like it does that.
Okay, next up we have the solar energy section, section 9.6.1. And in this section, we are proposing to amend the purpose of this section in recognition that our zoning bylaw accommodates agrivoltaics. And agrivoltaics are solar arrays that are co-located with agriculture. I'll skip over reading the first bullet point here because there are no amendments of that section proposed. But the second section of this section, or second amendment on the purpose section will read as, the intent of the bylaw is to create a reasonable regulation to ensure that the construction and operation of all solar voltaic installations be consistent with all applicable local, state, and federal requirements, notwithstanding Chapter 40A, Section 3, including but not limited to all applicable nuisance, noise, odor, lighting, etc., stormwater safety, construction, electrical, and communications requirements. Additionally, the bylaw is intended to enhance the town's rural and agricultural heritage while enabling installations of photovoltaic and agrivoltaic systems. All buildings, structures, and fixtures forming part of a solar photovoltaic installation shall be constructed in accordance with the state building code. And then,
That's a great photo that you got
Yeah.
from someplace.
Perfect.
Mhm.
it was from Photovoltaic Magazine, if anyone's interested. And then also regarding agrivoltaics in section 9.6.3.H4, It's proposed that additional clearing may be granted if the solar facility is located with an agricultural use. And then it notes that in no circumstance shall undue environmental harm be caused. And the amended text will read as follows. Clearing area shall include all areas of the parcel being disturbed. The access drive shall also be included in this area. Clearing areas may be increased up to 50% provided the board finds that there is no undue impact to the environment and the visual impact as described in 24.2.11.d is not detrimental to the abutters or neighborhood. Upon board findings that a solar array is an agrivoltaic system, clearing areas may be increased by an additional 10%, and no circumstance shall total additional clearing area exceed 60%.
Can you explain that last part? So additional clearing may be increased by an additional 10%.
So if the board finds
Oh, I see. So if they combine both, they could do 50 plus 10.
50 plus 10,
Okay, I got it.
yep.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is to accommodate the increased amount of land area that you might need from spacing the photovoltaics with the agriculture. Okay, if there are no additional,
So, just to back up,
Uh-huh.
because I'm sure that some people will talk about the undue impact to the environment. What does that mean?
well, I think that would be up to the board's discretion to determine. But I think, the applicant would have to demonstrate that there's not going to be an impact to, or there's not going to be a detrimental impact to critical natural resources, so streams, wetlands.
Or it might be, are you putting the solar array in a cleared field? In which case you're increasing the amount of space 50%, or are you cutting down forest? One would, you might say, doesn't have an impact, the other might have an impact, depending on where you're siting it in an agricultural setting.
So should we say environmental and visual impact? Undue environmental and visual impact, or something like that?
Could,
It says that. It says undue impact to the environment and the visual impact.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was trying to simplify it, but yeah.
One's in red and one's in black, so you'd think that someone with an architectural education would be able to get both of those, but he didn't go to MIT, but I don't know.
Yeah.
so, but, saying that it can't have any undue impact, does that mean that there's impact that's okay?
When I, thinking of an example of, they come in with an agricultural, agrivoltaic application, and they look to seek to get the 10% additional clearing because it's agriculture and energy producing. And that would encroach on wetlands, for instance. And then, we could find that encroaching on wetland is an undue impact because they can always just do reduced agriculture. And by the way, even though agriculture is exempt under the wetland bylaws, creating new agriculture by filling wetlands is not allowed unless it's cranberry bogs, unless it's meant to be a wetland.
Yeah.
Right.
I think another example I can provide is that, let's say there's a parcel of land that 50% is forested and 50% is already a natural field. And the applicant comes in and wants to clear 20, or clear half of that forest. So 25, so full 75% of that parcel is now going to be, a field. But when they come and apply and you say, why exactly do you want to clear that additional forest, they don't really have a great answer. Well, that would be an instance where you could say, well, this additional clearing isn't really necessary. You're not saying why it needs to happen. You have a perfectly good field over here to install this solar array.
I think the bottom line is I know it when I see it.
Right.
Kind of a problem.
That's right. Which is what we all, not what we always do, but what we do.
That's why we get elected, to exercise our judgment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now in section 9.6.3 K4, the visual impact section for large-scale solar arrays, we have proposed here to require a surety to ensure that site landscaping and reseeding establishes and that the site's drainage works as presented in the project plans. So then the amended text would read as, such plantings shall use native plants and a mix of deciduous and evergreen species may be located within the setback area. Said vegetative screening shall reach a mature form to effectively screen the installation within 5 years of installation. Planting of the vegetative screen shall be completed prior to final inspection and approval of the solar energy installation. The applicant shall provide surety, either through escrow account or other form of surety approved by the planning board, for a minimum of 2 growing seasons to ensure that the site is properly revegetated and that installed stormwater infrastructure is functioning properly.
So is there a section in this bylaw that talks about pollinator mix and vegetation in the solar array area, not in the buffer zone?
I don't believe there is reference to having a pollinator mix, but that is something that we could add into.
So if you added after native plants and pollinators,
Yeah.
right, wouldn't that be a simple fix?
Or native pollinator plants.
Or, you, So
Well,
there's
native
two
plant,
different
you're not
kinds
gonna necessarily just use pollinators, but you could say use native plants and
And
pollinators.
pollinators, yeah.
And a mix of deciduous and evergreen. So you're just adding 2 words.
so what comes before this when it starts such plantings? Do you know?
I'll have to pull up our zoning. Oh, you've got it? Okay.
I was sort of stunned by the fact that we have a bylaw that has five deep subsections, 9.6.3,
Solar-
K.4.
Gets pretty extensive.
It's like the Federal Register.
Yep.
It must be talking about the screen.
Yeah, but there's got to be a section that talks about
Well,
replanting underneath.
It's after this, it's, keep going. Yeah, design standards, and it's item 4.
Visual impacts.
So the preceding paragraph,
Section over here.
yeah, so the preceding paragraph says, when possible, a diversity of plants shall be used. The preference for species native to New England, use of exotic plants as identified by the most recent copy of the Massachusetts Prohibited Plant List maintained by the Mass Department of Ag Resources is prohibited. The section before that, paragraph before that, says that structures have to be reasonably shielded by vegetation.
What is K? Or go back to something where there's a heading,
K is design standards.
Design standards.
design standards, okay.
So this is 9.4.6? No, 9.6.
963.
K4. So it's the 4th design standard in the and yeah.
It's page 137 in the zoning bylaw.
Let's keep going.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so next we have another design standard, section 9.6.3.K.7. This one is just to add battery facilities as an appurtenant structure. So now it's battery facilities are listed as a structure that's accessory to the solar energy system.
Okay.
I think that's understandable and needed.
Okay, next we have a new subsection being added to the design standards. It would now, this section would be 9.6.3.K.10. This would be a design standard for fencing. And the section would require that photovoltaic and agrivoltaic systems shall be surrounded by fencing of a minimum height of 7 feet and a minimum of 6 inches above the ground.
Don't we have a fencing requirement now?
No, it's a very common condition of approval, but
Yeah, it's
it's
just a
not.
condition that we always put in. But it's not in the bylaw.
But doesn't specify, currently doesn't specify like this height and minimum height above the ground.
Don't even know if it calls for fencing explicitly. I don't believe so.
What about the material? I mean, I see a little bit of a problem. You're gonna build a 7-foot fence with 6 inches underneath, so you got a 6'6" fence.
Did we make it 6.5 feet? So that they can use a 6-foot fence, because 6 foot is pretty standard.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get a 6'6" type of fabric. Depending, on how they're making the fence. I don't know. I don't think they'll be able to meet the standard the way it is, right?
It's all
Yeah.
chain link fences.
So what are you saying it should be?
So what would be a
6
yeah,
foot 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 foot 6? Okay.
Well, what if, what if some smart aleck says, well, okay, I'll use a 4-foot, 4-foot fence that leaves a 2'6" gap above the ground. That doesn't do any good.
It doesn't do any good.
So
No.
we ought to say that, so it's a minimum of 6 inches above the ground, but I
Right.
think it should be,
No,
and no
It should be 6 inches above the ground, period.
Period.
That's it, yeah.
Not a minimum, 6 inches.
So
Okay.
remove minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either that or, yeah, that's fine. Either 6 inches or no greater
So
than.
it probably would be a 6-foot fence installed 6 inches above the ground.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Here you go.
As an engineer.
Well, I always try to build things, you draw a line, and sometimes it's hard.
All right. We will
Yeah, I think,
revise that accordingly.
I think Manny's comment is right on.
It's much simpler, straightforward that way.
So this is a new section, a new requirement? The next one?
Utility connections?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the requirement that, this next section, again, it's another design standard section, and it's for utility connections. It would require that transmission lines, utilities, and other such connections will need to be installed underground as feasible. So it would read, all utility connections and electrical transmission lines in service of photovoltaic installations and appurtenant structures shall be installed underground to the greatest extent feasible, depending on appropriate site conditions. Electrical transformers for utility and interconnections may be above ground as necessary to be approved by the planning board.
Do we need to include agrivoltaic? Or is that?
Yes. I just thought of that.
I don't know about the extent feasible. 'Cause people are gonna just have an argument, it's not feasible, I got ledge and I need it,
But
that's,
we're the arbiter.
you know.
All right, if there are no other comments, we'll move on to the next one. Just let me take this note really quick.
I think we already did this.
Where did I do
Mr.
this?
Chair, in presenting this to the town meeting, are we going to have sort of a, this is just a bunch of detailed
Yeah,
cleanup, we're not
Yeah.
really changing?
we're not changing much, so.
You can be surprised at town meeting, how easy it is to go sideways in a meeting saying 6 feet, maybe we should have 11 feet. And next thing you know is,
Down the rabbit hole.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
I,
well, deer can jump over a 6-foot
Right.
fence.
I saw
So-
a deer jump over a
Right.
6-foot fence. Right.
So the next section is just an amendment to a section title and to the section text. Two small revisions, but sizable implications, I would say. So this is to require financial surety for removal and remediation.
Mine is pertinent structures.
No, we already did
Yep,
that.
so
We
you're
just
gonna-
did that?
It got said
Oh,
in there
sorry.
twice.
Yeah, sorry, we're on section
On surety? Okay.
Yeah, 9.6.3.q. Essentially, this would require that a financial surety has to be established for removal and remediation of large-scale solar facilities on any property where it's being installed. So not just on municipal property. And then there is a reference to the building inspector that is on this section of the text, and that we struck that out just because it's not the building inspector who approves the surety, it's the planning board. If there are no comments, we will move to section 9.6.4. This is consultant review for large-scale solar energy systems, and this is similar to the previous revision. The building inspector does not request consultants or consultant reviews. So we just revised this accordingly to make references, or to just call out that this is just something that the planning board does. So again, references to building inspector were removed in this section.
So should we, in the second line there, should it be professional consulting engineers? Or just professional engineers?
I think you can leave it as professional engineers.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says engaging professional engineers and/or other technical consultants, so I think that
Yeah.
is saying that professional
Yeah.
engineers would be a consultant.
So just a grammar thing, I think that after and/or in the third line, it should be the planning board, not or planning board.
Yes. we can-
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion?
Oh, you're ahead of me. Yep, that's all we have here.
So we can, I think we have some time to get this back to the select board. Do we want to leave time for comment from our wide television audience?
Well, I think we can walk and chew gum. I would suggest, and I'd make a motion, that we send it to the town administrator to be reviewed by the town council, which should be spelled differently than what it is. And while the town council is reviewing it, we should also allow our enormous TV audience to send in emails, letters, weather balloons, any form of communication with comments to the planning board staff with comments on this. And those comments will also be taken into consideration, because I'm sure that the town administrator and legal counsel aren't going to form opinions instantly. But, so I think we can do
Yeah.
both at the same time.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to forward the zoning changes as amended this evening
Yeah,
to Jim Hartnett, the town administrator, for forwarding to the town council, unless we can just forward it to town council ourselves.
Jim forwards it to town council.
Yeah, we have to put in a formal request.
And do we want a deadline for public input
Yes,
for that?
we do. We,
And we leave the, and we should leave the comment period, not close the public hearing, and leave the comment period open to the next meeting, or?
yeah, our next meeting is
February 21st.
21st. Yeah, we could, that's 2 weeks, right? So we could leave the comment period open for 2 weeks. So we should let everybody know.
all right, so I would move that we forward the zoning bylaw amendments as amended here tonight to the town administrator to be reviewed by the town council, and leave the comment period open until our next meeting. And we should inform Jim Hartnett that we're leaving the comment period open until our next meeting, so he can let the town council know that.
Mhm.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. And if I might just suggest, Mr. Chair, that at town meeting, should there be few to no comments, I think this is in line with what Bob said, that the way to present this is that we had meetings with the zoning board, we had public meeting, we extended invitations, and these are technical amendments. And we've gotten, despite our efforts to get comments from people, no comments. So, so really, people have questions, but I don't think we need to go through
Yeah,
a presentation like tonight.
No, I agree. I think once we get it back in some kind of comprehensive form, I'll send a copy over to Steve Forrest and ask him how much of this can we put into one. And I think that's the way to do it, instead of
Particularly the,
bit by bit by bit, everybody will fall asleep.
Yeah,
particularly the solar piece, all of those kind of word change, that kind of stuff is, you know, there's a chunk of changes here, and that's what that is.
Yeah, I think he will let us combine some of it, because he doesn't want to have 50 different little amendments, so.
technical amendments, any questions? Otherwise, we'll make a motion to approve them.
Right,
Okay.
so, okay. Assistant Planners Report?
Sure. So I have some updates that I provided in my report. I'll go off with the first one. At the previous meeting, Mark had asked about the status of Isidoro Court, so I spoke to town council, and the case is still open, but, and pending, but there has been no new, recent activity on it, but it's still ongoing. For Bentley Estates, which is an older subdivision, I got in touch with Mr. Kafori, and he has informed me that in the spring, he'll coordinate with SW Cole to go over the items that need to be completed to wrap the project up, because we're still holding surety for that. I've also reached out to Bob Carey from Caricorp in regards to Granite Post Road, Meadowbrook, and the Lawton Trust. All three of those projects, we have ongoing surety being held at a pretty decent amount. So I'm waiting for his reply on the status of those projects. I haven't heard back yet. Stacy Lane off Fisher Road. I spoke to Captain Brisk today. So the subsurface water tank has been installed on that property. He was there to witness it, and within the next 2 weeks, the system's gonna be tested, and he will be on site to take a look at that and observe it, and I asked him for a letter when that happens. I'll also touch base with the building inspector on this property, since it seems like there are more foundations being done,
Houses being built.
houses being built. So I had, no one informed me about that,
I heard
building
5.
inspector.
5.
5.
There was a
Didn't say
total
any-
7 lots there?
Yes.
Someone reached out to me and asked, because they were getting ready, they're purchasing another lot and they're getting ready to build a house there. So within
Oh.
the next few weeks.
That's interesting. Okay, I'll definitely touch base with Ralph on that tomorrow morning. The harbor water study, from my notes that I had from the mid-December meeting, it seemed like Frank had to go back and look at the GIS data and kind of narrow down the properties that were the most promising. But I think he had to go out on the field to inspect them, and if I had to guess, I don't think he's been out there yet. But I think it was loosely established that we would meet again in mid-January. But since it's already February, I reached out to him yesterday, just to maybe request an update, but I have not heard back from him yet. For the Route 88 Sullivan Drive Solar, the check for the $50,000 for the landscaping was received today. All we're waiting on is the hard copy to be mailed back to us for the Form G. And I spoke with Manny Costa today. A pre-construction meeting for that should be established within the next week or two. So I will keep the board and building and the fire department in the loop when we schedule that. And for Walters Way, I think that since it's been a while since it's kind of been addressed, and luckily we haven't had a lot of snow this season, but usually a lot of the calls concerning Walters Way come in when there will be a lot of snow. But it still remains that it's unpaved, and we haven't really got a quote for that since November of 2021. We have $24,000 in surety right now for that project, which will not get us to the point to paving it to the 3-inch pavement that it's supposed to be. But I think that we should take the same steps that we're doing in Mile Way to get that going and kind of wrap that up.
Just so everybody knows, I'm not sure everybody was in the loop, that's a rural residential thing.
Walters Way?
That was not supposed to be a paved road.
So when I was reading back in 2017, it seems like the planning board voted from a gravel road to a 3-inch.
To allow them to pave it.
Right.
If they wanted to.
Okay.
And then the builder
Walked away.
walked away.
Yep.
And then, so you have this planning board approval as a second issue to allow them to pave it if we wanted to. And we didn't get more money. And then one of the homeowners started messing around with the drainage system.
Yep, that swale is filled in.
And so, and then one of the homeowners wanted to add some money to the $24,000 to help cover the cost of fixing everything, especially the drainage. And then, I don't know what happened. So, I was on site, you were on site, Jim Hartnett was on site. Last, I think we had any real discussions with them in person.
Yeah.
And,
Mr. Chair, so, like you said, there hasn't been much snow, but we just had a lot of, more rain than we've had in a long time. Nobody's complained about that?
Not yet.
I mean, we should take a ride by there and just see what's
Yeah,
kind of happened.
A new someone who moved into the neighborhood recently did inquire about the road and the status of it.
so I've looked at it as I drive by, and I think if you look down the road, some of it is paved. There's a part of it that's paved. And I think it's in front of somebody's house.
I was over there recently as well. There's a part that's paved.
See, one of the other issues is when the planning board, which I wasn't on the board, when they approved to repave it, but the design that was existing at that time to pave it would not have made any difference. I mean,
Oh, for the-
it was
for the
perfect, because it had a
drainage, right.
full swale around it. So the problem with that swale was, it was never built correctly. So now they got other issues there, and that's why the price is coming to fix the drainage. If that swale had been built correctly, they wouldn't have had a problem in the first place, and nobody would have complained about the swale. That swale should be, now it's going into, like, now people own the land. It was big cuts into the lots in order to keep that minimum slope on the swale. Now you just dug a ditch around it, and one of the original owners, her complaint was she fell in the ditch and you couldn't get the car out. So paving it's gonna be a problem. I mean, if we're trying to,
Well, I don't think
get the
we don't, if that quote, the quote was for $66,000 to pave it in 2021. I can't imagine what it is now, we only have $24,000.
Are we on the hook for some reason, because we voted to let them pave it with the drainage the way it was? Are we, if we got a quote to have somebody go out and give a bid to create the swale to design and gravel it, what that number would come out to? And then they would have what was originally planned there. That would involve removing a lot of the drainage that owner on the end had covered up and put
Yeah,
in.
but if you recreate the swale, you're gonna have problems with that homeowner.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
What did, town council look at this for us?
Yep, they did, back in the spring. The two options were basically to take that 24,000 and do as much as we could with it, maybe like compacted gravel or may have the homeowners, get a quote for the work that needs to be done and then have the money directly transferred over to the homeowners and make sure that the work that they have a quote for that's what it's being used for.
I think the other problem is the road there's a ditch on each side of the road, and I don't think the road is wide enough, and the ditch is too steep.
Yeah, telephone poles in the road.
And there's telephone poles in the road or in between, and we had, who did we have look at it?
Kodetsky.
Kordetsky.
Yep.
He was the original design engineer.
Was he?
Yes. That's why we had asked to have him come back, because Prime got involved in there in the middle
Right.
somehow.
So
Yeah, we have a plan.
maybe you could ask Alex Kordetsky to come in and talk with you
Okay.
and see what he came up with, because he was supposed to come up with
Well, I think
a way to
That's
use the
probably what I-
money that was available and create a plan for that.
Yep, so he did. I have the plan in the file, and there were 3 bullet points of how to reduce the price of what his plan depicted. I can resurrect it and get in touch with him. But we just have this, what do we do with this? We
I
need
mean,
to
my
close
thing
it out.
is the people that live on the road, some of them are, I guess, trying to look for the right word, innocent in this whole thing. And there's a couple that did the damage to the site that are blaming other people. And I really don't like pulling that. I mean, we have that money sitting there. It's kind of like they need to get together and solve this problem.
Right.
It's a terrible thing. It's just gonna get worse if we delay it. We need to come to some resolution, even if it isn't a good one. I mean, we need to have a finality of what we're doing and get the money out of our coffers.
Yeah, they need to get together with an association. We need to give them the 24 grand, said,
Yep.
good luck.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think this really stems from the town not having staff to do inspections and not having a process and where, once these subdivisions start into construction, there's someone inspecting it, looking at, is this built correctly, all of that. And it's, hopefully we can move away from that, but it really stems at that. We sit here, we approve something on a piece of paper, and then it's entirely possible that it would never, ever come back to us. We would never know anything, and the only time we know that it didn't go well is people come in and said, this is all broken, and then we learn it about it in the after effect, and in normal course of things, there should have been inspections when you clear the site, when you get the subgrade ready, when the drainage goes in, all of those kinds of things that we don't do because we don't, have staff. And that's, that's just, part of the legacy of the way the town is structured. And
But in that subdivision end of it, we do have, because they pay for the inspection, it just has to be to the point where the consultant goes out there and looks at it. I mean, I don't know when this gap happened. I haven't done any subdivisions in town in quite a few years, but in the 90s, when I was doing a lot of them, I mean, George was actually doing the inspections. And, I worked with George, in the 80s,
Yep.
in the same company, and, I mean, he didn't cut anybody any slack, I mean, the amounts, when I did Jillian Way for sidewalks, I mean, he held so much money that the contractor couldn't pay me.
right. So the issue is, I think what Bob's saying and what you're saying are both correct. that we approve a small subdivision, and then we give the subdivision decision to the building inspector, and we tell them, you know, you've got to do these things, you've got to call Cole or Tibbetts when you're ready to do the subgrade or whatever, you know, where the pipes are, where anything. But if they don't do that, we have no mechanism. The building inspector doesn't follow that. They don't go and say, well, did you inspect the road?
No,
Did you-
that's not their job.
It's not their job.
They inspect buildings.
Right. And,
So, well, I think we're going down the right track with the pre-construction meeting, because that's what we can tell them. I mean, it's gone back to, I don't know, you know, the Pacheco's that we had, the road, I built the road that they live on,
Yep.
the Andrea Court. Paul Pereira inspected it back then. You know, that was even before Tibbetts was doing
Mhm.
it, so that was like in the early 90s.
Yeah.
You know, he came out for subgrade, drainage, looked at it, you know, I mean, obviously, our highway surveyor that doesn't have time for that either, but I mean, I think moving in the direction, when we're gonna have infrastructure installed, sewer, we gotta get somebody that's in charge of that. I got that question with the Board of Health. You know, I mean, I understand the Board of Health and their regulations and their, you know, their, this nitrogen systems and, I mean, I just got somebody that called me and said the Board of Health called them about water running out of the lot, vacant lot that just had a well drilled. You know, I mean, I don't know what that's the Board of Health's jurisdiction on clean water running out on a lot. I think that's, you know, conservation or
from the
highway.
well, or from the well, or from
It's,
clearing to
it's
get
coming
to
out,
the-
it's coming out of the well, it's coming from the people's property on the upside, but, I know that they have the power because of public safety. But I think some of these other things gotta fall under conservation. And, I mean, stormwater, we probably need we need an engineer. There's no doubt, we need somebody in town. Ralph is doing the stormwater on the buildings. I can almost guarantee you, I didn't look at it, but Walter's Way, I'm sure the drainage infiltration for the roof gutters isn't installed. I can guarantee it. You know, and my problem with that's been the homeowner who is paying for that, you know, nobody's inspecting it. I mean, you got contractors that are gonna build it the right way, and you got contractors that aren't gonna build it the right way. We had that other project, you know, the assisted living, where they tied French drains. They tied the roof gutters into French drains. That's another one, that's coming down from the building inspector.
Yeah. Well, that's,
Well, I think what, you know, just the way forward, we have to clean up these old issues as much as we can. Then the way forward, I think, when we approve subdivisions,
I think we're on the
we-
right track,
we-
yeah.
we write into it, you know, you're obligated to notify the planning board when you do this and that, and go to the planning department, and then we can tee up the inspector to come out and look at it. And so if we put those kinds of things in the subdivision approval, at least the word is that whether or not they do it.
We'll put it on whichever consultant we use for that project, because we got a couple of different ones that we're using. It should be his, you know, once they make contact with each other, tell them, okay, in the pre-construction meeting, we're gonna have these inspections, and, you know, don't proceed past this if I didn't see it. or
well,
it's
we
not
had,
gonna get
we had a
approved.
problem years ago where Tibbetts, when Tibbetts was here, went out and did inspections for somebody, because they called and asked for them, but we didn't have
Money in the
any
account.
money in the account. And they didn't pay. And they've been before us just recently, so I'm not gonna say who it is, but, I ended up going to small claims court for the planning board for the town to collect that money. So, I think now that we have a full contingent on the planning staff, I think it's gonna be easier to do this, but, you know, I don't think that we want, applicants, developers, whatever they are, calling Cole directly and saying, hey, come out. Because we have to make sure that we have enough money in the account to pay them, because otherwise.
But then we're gonna make sure that they call us so that
Right.
nothing slipped through the cracks, yeah, I mean, I can understand.
Well, isn't there a condition, when we grant approval for a subdivision, that, like we're doing with large-scale solar voltaics, that the applicant or the developer pays for the
Oh,
consultants?
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
It just sometimes, with the invoicing, you know, we don't know how much the consultant is gonna invoice for. So even if we have money in the account, let's say $3,200, and the invoice comes in for 35, then we have to ask for more money
from the developer?
from the applicant,
Yeah.
from the developer.
Well,
But it's a matter of, you know, when the inspection is happening and when the invoice comes in, it can be weeks.
so they don't put anything up front of, say, $100,000?
Oh,
No,
yes,
not
they
that
do. Oh,
much.
yes,
They
they do.
put like 8,000, I believe. Is it
Depends on
8,000?
what it's for.
Depends on
I
what
mean,
comes back from Cole.
Yeah.
Say 3,000, 4,000.
So if Cole suggests it's gonna be 3,000, we ask for 4 or something like that. So, but they're doing that. But,
Yeah.
you know, there's complicated issues like Oak Ridge. I mean, that was done before I was on the board, but I was on the board when some of this stuff was coming up. That's a really complicated thing, and it's not a subdivision. So it's a special permit, and it's a very complex building pattern that happened over years. I mean, instead of, you know, it doesn't happen all at once like the solar array or the special permit for the cannabis stuff. It's a continuing thing, and I think the problem over the years is that we lost people in the planning department. We got new people, and, you know, Oak Ridge is in the bottom of the file. It isn't something on.
Slipped through the cracks.
So do you need a motion to accept the assistant planner's report?
I don't think we need.
No, I don't think we
Okay.
need to. We just need to move on to the planner's report.
Right.
Alright. So Amy and I have prepared, and you're welcome to provide comments on this if you'd like, but we just wanted to formalize a report for A&Rs. So there's a template that we circulated with you all, and it's just a more formal report to provide planning
it's
board
great.
staff's recommendation.
I think it's
Okay.
really good.
All right. Just pulled straight from state statute, so. Next, I've got one-stop expressions of interest. I just want to let you all know that we submitted those. And that was for the streetscape improvements on Main Road in Central Village. Assessing the feasibility of converting the old high school to a multi-use community and municipal center with some affordable senior housing, and extending sewer from Fall River to Route 88. So we'll see what they say about those 3 EOIs.
When do we expect to hear back from them, did you say?
So if you only submit 2 EOIs, they're due at the end of March. So I would guess at least April.
Yeah.
I think the applications are due mid-June, late June.
Yep.
So
And then
couple
sometime in
months.
October, you'll hear.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep. Also last week, we submitted 2 applications to the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program. There was a grant for work associated with our municipal separate storm sewer permit, and there was a grant request submitted. Buzzards Bay Coalition helped prepare that. They're very helpful with getting that application together, and their request was for a feasibility study for wastewater at the let. And lastly, Jim and I attended the Finance Committee meeting last week. We presented the planning board's budget to the committee. We also gave them an overview of our, the planning office's metrics, so grants applied for, A&Rs considered, special permits, so on. And they didn't express any concerns with the budget, so
Right.
it's
Yeah, I
Good
think
thing.
that worked well.
yeah.
So I got an email talking about grant possibilities that has a connection or a site connection for the SNEP grant network. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're gonna have like an open house or something like that to let people know all the different things. If you need that connection, I can forward it to you.
Yeah, if you could forward that to me, I'll take a look and see if there's anything that we could consider further. And I'm done with my report.
Okay, invoices.
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I know we have an invoice from East Bay Media Group for the advertising the zoning public hearing that we just conducted, or we're still in the process of conducting. So I move we approve the expenditure of $246 for the ad we placed in East Bay Media Group.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Correspondence. The Zoning Board of Appeals notice for, I think, February 22nd, for a hearing on whether or not somebody in the harbor can knock down their house and build a new one. And I guess their meeting is about whether it's more detrimental to the neighborhood because it's a substandard lot. And then we have minutes.
Mr. Chair, I read the minutes of January 4th. I find them accurate and complete, and I move we approve the January 4th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
So I would, I have a comment, and I don't know if I can find it again here.
You meant January 24th, right?
Yeah, sorry, did I say January 24th, I meant.
So the last sentence on the second page, on the first paragraph, the BBC is asking the planning board to request to the Board of Selectmen a 10% match of $30,000. No, that's true.
Which,
Maybe I read it somewhere else.
BDC is asking.
Yeah, in the motion below that, Bullard moved to support Buzzards Bay Coalition's prepared application on behalf of the town and endorse the request to the Board of Selectmen, not from the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, to the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
To the Board of
as edited.
Selectmen, and then you can cross off the other two requests. Two requests, well, you can figure it out, but it's not from, it's to.
Okay. I agree to that amendment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And short and long-term planning?
Mr. Chair, I have a piece of, I don't know whether it comes under short and long-term business, but it's something you and I discussed. and that is I was contacted by Wendy Nicholas, who some of you may know. This pertains to the Resilience Committee. Wendy is a Westport resident who has worked in various areas of historic preservation. She's worked for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, for the Waterfront Historic Area League, for the Providence Preservation Association. She's nationally known in historic preservation, and she wanted to talk to me, and she included Kit Wise, who many of you know, who has moved back to Westport, is a restoration architect. I've worked with Kit on a number of projects when I was doing historic preservation in New Bedford. He's done a lot of work down at the Point. He lived at the head of Westport. So they're both experts in historic preservation, and they came to me saying they would like to join the Resilience Committee, and I forward their information to Michael and Amy, and we were meeting at Duval's, and Jim happened to be there, so he sat in, and they said, we'd like to just form an additional subcommittee and look at the impact on historic structures and buildings of climate change. So I say structures because if you look at the head of Westport, you know, even the historic walls at the head of Westport are subject to sea level rise and so on. Wendy's done a lot of work in Newport on this. I've read the reports. I happened to read the reports, I don't know, a year ago, of the flooding in Newport. When you think about it, historic buildings were built right down near the waterfront 300 and 400 years ago. And so they're vulnerable. So I said, what a great idea. So I'd like to recommend that the planning board endorse for membership on the Community Resilience Committee, Kit Wise and Wendy Nicholas. So that's a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
To that. I'll draft yours.
Anything else for short and long-term planning?
Did you get their names, Nadine?
I have them.
Oh, you have them?
Yeah, I mean, Mel.
So I got a question for Bob. So sea level rise, how, do we have any kind of data? So, you know, as an engineer, all our elevations are based on mean sea level. So when was mean sea level established? And how much has the sea risen since then?
Well, it's been established in different places lots of times, but 1929 was the first time there was a national sea level, a national sea level datum that was a fixed datum. And then and that was changed to the National Geodetic Vertical Datum in '88. So that's a uniform datum. So if you go back to 1929, you're talking roughly a foot, 11 inches, depends on where you are. It varies at different locations, but that's generally what it's been.
So 100 years.
100
Yeah,
foot.
about 100, what we're seeing is an increase. It doesn't seem like much, but if you look at the last 50 years, that increase has been greater than the first 50 years of the 100 years worth of data. So it's increasing.
It's
slowly,
accelerating.
But it is absolutely positively documented, measured, numerous NOAA flood stations. You know, we're seeing 12 inches along this coast and the immediate Boston Harbor. We're seeing just under a foot of rise. And it could range from 10 7/8 inches or something, but it's that kind of range. And the rate is increasing. So if you look out, 50 years, 20, 70, we're probably gonna have something, an additional foot or two of normal seawater rise. And the thing to really pay attention to is I don't want to go on all night of a lecture, but it is, we argue about whether it's 7 feet, 10 feet. We argue about the extremes. Is the climate going to change so the big chunk of Antarctica falls off and melts? And, all of those things are possible, but it's the wrong argument to have, because if you think about every full moon and new moon, then we get an additional, here we get an additional 1.5 feet of water. Offshore here we have about 3.5 foot of tide range, and up in the river it's around 3 round numbers. Boston, it's 9.5 feet, and in normal full moons they get 11 feet, 12 feet. And the further north you go, the greater that gets. You get up in the Bay of Fundy, in the Minas Basin, it's 54 feet, is the tide range. So, the argument about whether it's 7 feet or another 2 feet will do things like you won't be able to leave. If you're at your home in the Coxet, you'll have to wait till the tide changes to get out. So you can't have a heart attack or anything during the
Well, my feeling on that is, we always say, okay, we're building a house elevation 18, whatever they got it at right now. But 1 foot, what's gonna affect the drinking water? The drinking water is more significant.
The drinking water
than-
and the immediate edge is very vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, that's the purpose of the CRC, is to identify what are the threats and to make sure that we understand what the most important threats are, because if you put your eyeball on the wrong threat, then we do a big injustice to the people of Westport. So, heat kills more people than sea level rise. So it's trying to figure out where are we most vulnerable so that we can take scarce resources.
We're already fragile.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So how do we take the science that we have and make sure we put resources where we're most vulnerable? All right.
Thank
Want a motion to adjourn?
I do.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.